Can foreign currency reserves be sanction-proof? The war will be as formative for reserve managers as the Asian financial crisis was. Crypto investors sometimes say they have been rugged when the developers of a coin vanish, along with the capital that has been allocated to it, pulling the rug out from under them. Foreign exchange reserve managers might never have expected to recognize the feeling, but almost as soon as Russia invaded Ukraine, American and European authorities froze the assets of the Central Bank of Russia. As others followed, the country's first line of financial defense was obliterated. According to the Russian government, 300 billion of its $630 billion in reserves are now unusable. The managers of the $13.7 trillion in global foreign exchange reserves are a conservative breed. They care about liquidity and safety above all else, largely to the exclusion of profits. Much of their thinking was shaped by the Asian financial crisis of 1997-1998, when currencies collapsed in the face of huge capital outflows. The lessons learned was that reserves need to be plentiful and liquid. Watching a big chunk of Russia's reserves being made functionally useless is likely to be just as formative, even for those who face no immediate prospect of a terminal rift with the world's financial superpowers. That is particularly true for the State Administration of Foreign Exchange, SAFE, the agency in charge of China's $3.4 trillion in reserves. India and Saudi Arabia, with $632 billion and $441 billion in reserves respectively, may also be paying close attention. Barry H. Green, an economic historian, has described the choice of composition of foreign exchange reserves as being guided by either a Mercury or a Mars principle. The mercurial approach bases reserves on commercial links. The currencies being held are largely determined by their usefulness for trade and finance. A Martian strategy bases the composition more on factors like security and geopolitical alliances. Mars seems to be in ascendant. Central banks are bound to take into account which countries will and will not replicate sanctions against them. In 2020, Guan Tao, a former SAFE official now at Bank of China International, laid out a range of ways that China could guard against the risk of sanctions. In extremis, he suggested that the dollar could stop being used as the anchor currency for foreign exchange management and be replaced by a basket of currencies. Even that option, which might have sounded extreme a month ago, now falls short of what a Martian central bank would need, given the degree of cooperation with American sanctions. There are few, if any, jurisdictions with large liquid capital markets dominated in currencies that are useful in an emergency, but which do not pose a risk from a sanction perspective. Some worried central banks might start increasing their holdings of yuan assets, which currently make up less than 3% of global total. But there is no solution for China itself. Why not go back to basics? Gold, the original reserve asset, is a large liquid market outside anyone jurisdiction's controls. Researchers at Citigroup, a bank, estimated that most of the reserves that Russia can currently marshal are in gold and the Chinese yuan. Yet the West sanctions are so expensive that they prohibit any potential buyers from purchasing the assets Russia has accumulated over the years. Even a would-be counterparty in a neutral or friendly country will think twice about transacting with a central bank under sanctions if it risks their own access to the financial plumbing of the dollar system. There has been more adventurous speculations too. Zoltan Pozsar of Credit Suisse, a bank, has suggested that China sell treasuries in order to lease ships and buy up Russian commodities, arguing that the global monetary system is shifting from one backed by government bonds to one that is backed by commodities. Bold as the forecast is, it is also emblematic of the few conventional options available to reserve managers. And the lack of good solution points to another drastic approach, that countries limit their use of reserves for their financial defense altogether. Various tools of autarky, such as tighter capital controls, could become more attractive. Governments also typically rely on reserves as the last guarantee that they can service foreign currency debts. But if that guarantee is no longer absolute, then they are less likely to be comfortable issuing dollar and euro dominated bonds at all. Private companies may be prodded to de-dollarize too. If you don't invest in the first place, you won't be rugged. That is the Economist. Can foreign currency reserve be sanction proofed?